So to start, I would like to know your views on how a high school student should balance academic rigor and extracurricular activities.
How they should balance it?
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big believer, of course, and I think there's plenty of research, if you will, out there now too that shows the more students are involved, whether it be one extracurricular, multiple extracurriculars, that there's that correlation between academic success and how those two work together. The more you're involved, I think, the more you see that the overall education of a student, whether my view or their personal view, they will see that it's important to do the right thing, if you will, by meeting certain expectations, not only with what they're doing outside the classroom with their extracurricular, but inside the classroom as well. I guess that's my answer for that.
Regarding specifically the work environment and working, what would you say constitutes academic rigor?
What constitutes academic rigor? It's one of those words I try to avoid using anymore, just because it's gotten to the point of such a, over the last 2 or 3 years, I think anymore, when I think people who are involved with teaching day in, day out, the idea of rigor is kind of starting to fall on them a little bit differently than it first came out. Because I think a lot of the times we're using the word rigor with teachers who have always tried to get their students to go a little bit deeper with material. And so I think it kind of, the use of the word rigor here lately,
Right.
I'm just not talking about our building, but other places that other teachers, administrators I've talked to, that phrase is starting to kind of take a, I don't want to say a negative connotation a little bit, but I think some teachers are somewhat offended by saying that, you know, we're not teaching at a rigorous level already, you know. But in saying that, I think it is very important, whatever you want to call it, try to call it something else besides rigor anymore, but I think it's huge. I think it makes teachers reflect on whether or not we're superficially covering subject material versus are we going for true understanding, depth of meaning, depth of context, and what they're having their students try to learn. So it's critical.
And so, to use a different word, what
You
would
don't have
you? Well, we could use the word expectations as well. So, what do you think is an appropriate level of expectations to place on the students?
Just generally speaking,
Yeah.
it's a tough call. I think, especially thinking from the high school perspective, because there's the content areas now that students bring, have always been exposed to. Those objectives and standards will vary from teacher to teacher, from class to class, as far as individual classrooms. Now, of course, each content area has established certain objectives and essential learning outcomes for their content areas. But establishing those expectations, and it's something we push for too, is to see, when we walk into a classroom, we want to know right away what the learning target, what that objective is for that particular day. And then throughout the word rigor, you can tell real quick by that visible objective and whether or not the teacher has referenced it multiple times during a lesson. You just get a good feel whether or not they're digging deeper today, or is it just more or less, what are the causes of, let's say the French Revolution. Whereas you could dig a little deeper with an objective, making a learning target that's going to deal with not only the causes, but how those causes impacted society, what were the effects, so on and so forth. But you can tell real quick, I think, going into a classroom, if there is that rigor, if you will, going on. More or less, I see the rigor being just active engagement with the lesson. So if you can visibly tell that students are actively engaged with what's going on in the classroom, then you know there's rigor because of the activity, the cognitive engagement at that level.
Now, on the flip side of that, do you think it's also important for students to be rigorous in their extracurriculars?
Well, I think to get the most out of anything, there's going to be that higher expectation. You set the higher expectations. Those students who want to reach that higher expectation, whether it be extracurricular or in the classroom, then yeah, they're going to get more out of it. And I think a lot of times the students are going to be surprised on what they can accomplish They may go into extracurricular, not a little unsure whether it be athletically or fine arts or whatever, and they're going to find out real quick that they can be thrust into a leadership role within that group and surprise the heck out of themselves and others around them. So again, those sponsors, those coaches, those directors, they need to set the expectations at the beginning, just like teachers do. Some students are going to rise to the occasion, of course, but I think that communication piece, as far as from the teachers, from the sponsors, if they set that up front, this is where I need everybody to get to make this a successful group, classroom, and then I think more times than not, you're going to see that positive response by students.
So the main goal is to always set an objective for our students.
Well, I think so. There's got to be that objective. It's going to be multiple objectives, of course. And again, that goes back to whoever's in that leadership role, I guess, with that group or in that classroom. But
yeah. And what would you say would be meaningful extracurricular activities for the students?
Meaningful? I think they're all very meaningful. We have very active athletic teams, of course, who there's some very high expectations. And again, you're going to see there's high expectations from the school, from the coaches, sponsors. There's going to be high expectations set by the students themselves in these extracurriculars. Parents have high expectations for these groups as well. The community has high expectations for it, but we have very high expectations for not only our athletic groups, but very active chapters with FFA, FBLA, who do an amazing job. And again, it goes back to not only community support, family support for those, but we have some really good coaches, really good sponsors who kind of set the bar high for their kids, and those programs are able to take off from there.
And how would you say that these activities, these extracurriculars, could help students round out their education and give them a more rounded education?
I get like the FFA, for example. Those kids are thrust into leadership roles. They are thrust into situations where they are doing basically service activities that gets them involved in the community, gets them involved with leadership within their groups as they go to conferences and contests throughout the state and the nation, for that matter. And so these students, I think, are involved in a lot of these extracurriculars, and even sports included too. Once they leave high school, if they've participated in 1 to 2 to 3 of these different extracurricular activities, I think it does provide a kind of a well-rounded, I think they're better off, to be honest, once they leave high school, whether they go college, whether they go right into work, career related. I think they've got a skill set that a lot of other students may not have. And I think it's just how to work within small groups, larger groups. A lot of them are thrust into the leadership roles. And of course, a lot of that involves communication skills. So it does prepare them, I think, better than many others once they graduate.
And as an administrator specifically, how would you encourage your students to get that experience in different fields and different kinds of extracurricular activities?
I think we do a pretty good job with, of course, we're kind of that transition, from middle school to high school, through multiple parent meetings prior to the beginning of their freshman year, student handbooks, other publications. We list the different kinds of organizations that are available. And I think the middle school has really helped too, because I think in the last couple of years especially, or maybe it's just because my son now is a middle schooler, I'm aware of they have a lot of opportunities available too. So we have a lot of students who are already have some excitement, some knowledge of being involved in some of these extracurriculars and seeing some not only fun things they're doing, but how it's kind of enriching their lives to a certain degree. And they come into the high school asking about these groups. So we talk about it a lot. We make lots of announcements, but it's something we push that, and we talk about students. Families come to us with concerns with students, whether it be grade, behaviors, things like that. And we will tell them, we'll ask them, one of our questions is, well, are they involved in any kind of extracurricular? And we'll tell them, when we find that the more students are involved with with the school setting, whether it be with groups, teams, whatever, that we will find, academic achievement rise, and we'll see behaviors improve. So